around with face of a stranger. Quiet observer, never get too close. I see the world, but it's through this window. Another side to see, I'm ready to know. Not every story's written on a sleeve. Some stories take digging deep. Eyes wide open, words unspoken. Where are you going, darling? Where have you been? Stories to tell, emotions we felt, good and the bad in the hands we've been dealt. I wanna know why, I wanna know why you're the way you are. He's from the city, she's from the south. Two different chapters told miles out. That back row living in his White House. So many stories that I need to know. Not every story's written on a sleeve. Some stories take digging deep. Eyes wide open, words unspoken. Where are you going, darling? Where have you been? Stories to tell, emotions we felt, good and the bad in the hands we've been dealt. I wanna know why, I wanna know why you're the way you are. So many stories right in front of me. Some people climb to heights I've never seen. Too many falling down off their feet. These stories take digging deep. Eyes wide open, words unspoken. Where are you going, darling? Where have you been? Stories to tell, emotions we felt, good and the bad in the hands we've been dealt. I wanna know why you're the way you are. Why you're the way you are. Why you're the way you are. Tiptoe around with face of a stranger. Quiet observer, never get too close. I see the world, but it's through this window. Another side to see, I'm ready to know. Not every story's written on a sleeve. Some stories take digging deep. Eyes wide open, words unspoken. Where are you going, darling? Where have you been? Stories to tell, emotions we felt, good and the bad in the hands we've been dealt. I wanna know why, I wanna know why you're the way you are. He's from the city, she's from the
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to a Silverline Show on Tuesday, hosted by myself. And as always, I am joined by two fabulous gentlemen, all with various levels of hairline. After 25, it doesn't get any better. First up, we got Mr. Aaron.
Yes.
Perfect.
Perfect. That's the answer you're looking for. Yes. Did you speak? Yeah, I'm the penciler on Friar Rush, and then the upcoming new Obsolete comic, which is coming soon from Silverline. I did a cover for the Bea Kickstarter too, which I think looked pretty cool.
I enjoyed it.
And yeah, and then I do my own comic, Godlings, which I'm also finishing up this year. So lots of things. Like, I'm finishing up Godlings and starting Obsolete, so I'm transitioning. It's a transitional phase in my life right now.
Ah. Entering into a new season. And we are also joined by Mr. Quentin.
Yes, I'm Todd McFarlane. You might know me from McFarlane Toys, Spawn. I've done quite a few. I'm kind of a big deal. Just put it that way. No, I'm Quentin Bedwell. I'm working on...
You didn't take your medication tonight, did you, Quentin?
Yeah. Yeah, those other personalities are coming through. I'm working on the third book of Trumps at Silverline and some other stuff that's yet to be announced or released. And also been working on some commissions for different people. Been kind of doing some stuff for Action Force. Over in the Valaverse, you ought to go check that out. It's a figure line. Also, I have a board game on GameCrafter.com called Relic Quest. It's in pretty much open beta. You're welcome to buy it and try it out, see what you think about it. And yeah, there's going to be expansions to it and all kinds of stuff. But that's pretty much it.
And I am Tim TK, Associate Editor at Silverline, writer, creator of Wolf Hunter, and producer/host of a show on Tuesday. And tonight we are talking about balance, the concept, equilibrium in all things. But first, we should probably keep the lights on by thanking our sponsors for tonight. First up, we got Daytona Beach Comic Convention, DaytonaBeachComicConvention.com. Check out their website for dates, pricing, tickets, all that good stuff. It is a premier location for all things comics, collectibles, all that in the Daytona Beach area. And that is the history list. We don't know if we have a new graphic. But they had a free camp available in July. And now you can subscribe to their online newsletter where every week you do get a blast from a historian talking about some subject or other. And of course, they're connected with Steam Patriots, our recently launched American War of Independence book set in a steampunk alternate timeline. And also my book Wolf Hunter set in a secret history behind World War II. And our other sponsor tonight is us. Imagine that. We got 2 books on Kickstarter right now. You can go.
Yeah.
We got this is we're showing a panel from some panels from Bea in our preview window, and we also have Silverline Team Up featuring Champion and Miss Fury, and you can go get those on Kickstarter. Again, Silverline, we do things a little differently here. You're not throwing money at a pipe dream. These comics are already finished. You are simply pre-ordering them before we put them in retail and online. So, yeah, with that, we should probably get in tonight's subject. So, balance. We all kind of threw some suggestions in our show chat earlier today when I mentioned that I had nothing for tonight. Quentin, of course, is kind of the master of balance right now, managing creative work, day job work, family work.
The master.
Yes.
And I'm going to use this as a training video for all of you out there who are just questioning how you can balance everything, all of the hats that you have to wear, you're going to get a definitive life-changing answers tonight in this stream.
And
Just stay tuned all the way to the end. So.
And we will mail out your diploma for that
where
course.
He reveals secrets of the universe.
Yes. And I like to think that Aaron and I are no slouches either, both managing creative work, day jobs. Maybe not children, unless Aaron has some secrets that he's not aware of yet. I hope not, for my own sake. And all that good stuff. So we will get into it with probably the first probably the thing that everyone gets asked all the time. Oh, you made that handiwork? Where'd you get the time? I can never. So how do we go about making the time to do our stuff that we do? I'm half asleep right now, so I'm going to ramble a little bit when I ask these questions. So how do we make time to pursue our stuff? Where do we find that the initial place to even put it on the schedule before you even get into the finer points of the balancing act? I'll open that up to the chat on the floor.
Well, I say, how do you make time? You make time. You just make time.
Perfect.
Yeah, you put it in. Yeah,
some water, you mix it together. I mean, time's really easy to make. I mean,
yeah.
I have gallons of it out there, right?
Yeah.
I was told, and I believe this, that you make time for what's important to you. If you say to somebody, if somebody wants you to check something out or do something, and you say, well, I really don't have time for that. Really what it is you're not really interested enough to take the time. So anytime anybody tells you, or if I ever tell you or somebody else tells you, well, I don't really have time for that, what they're really saying is they're not really interested. Because you make time for what you love, and regardless of whatever it is. So if you love to do what you're doing, you will figure out a way. You will go without sleep. That's what I do. You'll wake up early. You'll spend lunches. You'll be eating your lunch while you're drawing or whatever it is you're doing to try to get done. That's one thing, but sometimes it's not quite so hectic. So it's not like that all the time. What do y'all think?
I usually when I work, I do that. I usually come home and draw at night. Even if I draw one panel, you can organize it to like, okay, I'm going to just draw one panel, one thing tonight. It may be slow going, but eventually over time, if you do something every day, it'll eventually get done.
Yeah, so that's the way I look at it. A lot of times is I've got, especially at the start of a project, I've got this big, huge stone, and I have, a sledgehammer or a pick, and a lot of times it is just chipping away.
Yep.
Making progress, maybe not a lot. Yep. Sometimes pieces drop off of it in large chunks, but a lot of times it just seems to be pebbles.
Yep.
But either way, as long as you're doing the work, you are making a difference, and it is getting done.
Yep.
So
yeah, I have the same thing where I have like a bare minimum where come home from work and just try to knock that out if I can. Ideally, I want to schedule out more time, but Terry Pratchett, who we all know and love, one of the best science fiction writers of the modern era, his daily writing habit is only about 300 words, which when your average novel is 68 to 80,000 words, that doesn't seem like a whole lot, but if you just chip at it day by day, you make progress. So if I can get home and write like a page's worth of scripting, that's fine. That's what I need to do. And like when it said, you make time for what's important to you. So the calendar app on my phone is my best friend. I'm the person that tracks my writing time, my gym time. I have to schedule out like my hangouts now, or like even just random dates. It's all in the calendar. But that also helps as a good visualizer, because if you see stuff that you're not really going to feel as good doing as you would writing or illustrating or coloring or what have you, it allows you to kind of catalog that and know what to knock out. You don't need to get mojitos on Saturday morning when you'd be spending an hour doing your craft.
Yeah.
Or do the Hemingway thing and drink your mojito while you work on your craft. And then try to sober up by the time you edit.
I think a lot of the problem you run into, though, is when you hit parts of something that you really like,
Mm-hmm.
and it hits those lulls or those places
Oh,
where you're not real excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like for me, I love doing comics, but I hate doing layouts of comics.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of
Because
them either.
it's tough. It's tough. Sometimes we talked about this some in weeks past. It's a tough thing. Sometimes it's tougher than other times. But that it kind of makes me want to put off stuff because it's just not fun to me. Now it's
Yeah.
fun once I get it done, and I feel like I won something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's kind of where discipline takes over from art. I forgot who it was. It might have been Dolly. I said the difference between someone who wants to make something and someone who makes something is one is inspired, or the other one is disciplined.
Yeah.
But that's why the calendar is it's that visual reminder is super nice for me, because it's on the calendar. I have to do it. That the calendar is telling me to do it, so I have to do it. Pardon my Facebook Messenger noises for those watching. It's kind of
That Dolly Parton, she's a smart chick.
I think it's Salvador Dali. Yeah.
Just kidding.
Little
Just
different.
kidding.
Yep. But Dolly Parton, Salvador Dolly Parton. Someone please make that a character in a panel. Okay. Would that be Salvador Dali with the hair, or Dolly Parton with the mustache?
Hmm.
That's an even more interesting image.
Yeah. But there's another quote which I'm blanking. But you take a small victory. So you sit down to do your thing, and even if you're not feeling it, as long as you can get one word out or one line out, that's a win for that day.
Yeah.
That's a line you can build off of. And typically, once you get into that state of flow, once you understand what your flow feels like, once you get that first line down or that first word out, the rest of it just kind of tumbles out until you've hit your quota for the day. Unless it is just an absolutely brutal day, in which case you may need to do a little bit of rearranging, come back to it, get some fresh eyes.
Yeah, definitely. And I know just even yesterday, I was not excited to do the stuff that I was doing. But, once I got set down, I thought, well, I'm just going to give a little bit to this, and then I'll just, go to bed or whatever.
Yeah.
And I started on it, and I got in the zone.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happens, it was like butter.
Yeah.
Just, it was like 3:30 in the morning. Yeah, it literally 3:30 in the morning. So I'm kind of on fumes right now too.
Yeah, and that's the it may not be the best thing, but the stereotype of the sleep deprived artist is very true.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I had an instructor in high school once who said that laughter is just the moment where you drop your sanity. or you drop the facade of sanity. I mean, if you watch someone laugh, they look insane, and it's just raw emotion. There is no comprehensive thought behind it. So when part of what you do is just trying to tap into your emotion and create that in some sort of material form, pull it from your brain ether. I'm sure we're all chock full of different neuroses.
Oh yeah.
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 So
I believe that.
Crazy dudes at 3 a.m. yelling at blank pages on a tablet is par for the course. But for those of you who might be having issues where you feel like your schedule is already too full, and you're trying to figure out how to slide it in, and you don't know if you can cut anything, that's kind of where we're getting at. Where Quentin said, you do it on your lunches, you do it on your small breaks, or you do some soul searching. This is something that I had to do recently, where for those of you who've been following Silverline for a while now, you know that I am also a training powerlifter, and recently-ish got into boxing. So those are several hours a week, usually several hours a day. But I found that I was cutting into my writing time. So I decided that for me, making comic books was more important than achieving super optimal power lifts. So you're welcome, first of all, dear reader. But then I'll open up other guys. Have you had any experience, digging in and figuring out, all right, this is something that's not necessarily helping me where I want to be, I need to cut it, or how do you come about those decisions yourselves?
I ended up to where I'm at now. I work freelance with other projects, but I am basically, strangely enough, found myself a patron that is helping me out, which is something that is rare for artists.
Yeah.
But that's how artists survive for most of human history. They had patronage.
Yep.
So I have somebody helping me out, so that helps out a lot. But I also do like a lot of networking and stuff outside, so I have to definitely have to give up things because I work at night like most artists do.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I'm trying to think. There was something recently I just had to kind of like stop doing, and I can't think of what it is now. I guess it wasn't important. Something small. But yeah, I've had stuff get in the way of that.
With me, usually it's not. Usually it's, I'd like to say that I have the willpower and the gumption to be able to say, you know what, I've done this enough. It's time to go do this other thing. Unfortunately, a lot of times I stay a little too long. Especially when it gets into the art. I get in that zone that I was talking about, and I start firing on all cylinders, and then I lose track of time. The hands on the clock just go round and round, and that's what I'm getting to now. Is usually how I go from one thing to the other is because somebody tells me, hey, won't you come on and let's spend some time with the kids and the family, today, because, yesterday you worked all day and you didn't, and that's what happens sometimes. Sometimes I don't even, after work, I go in there and I eat, tickle the kids or whatever, and then come right back in here, pull right back up to the desk. And so, sometimes it's kind of decided for me when my stopping points are, because if it's left to me, a lot of times I just get in that zone and I will exhaust myself. Because this is not just fun for me. This is also therapy, because when you get to doing this, it's like, there are parts of it that is just very therapeutic. It's very mind clearing, and I think that's one reason why artists are so maniacal about their art sometimes. whether it be writing or drawing or whatever it is. Even a sportsman doing sports, it's almost like there's a need,
Yeah.
there, and it's very, very
Yeah.
good to get. It's almost like taking a vacation into a different world, a different land, and in a lot of ways, it's a lot better than watching a movie
Mhm.
that you might get disappointed during, or reading a comic book.
Yeah.
You just got your own world rolling, and you're inside of it, and then somebody says, "Hey, it's 9:30," and then you just get yanked right out.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. That's that Aristotle thing. It's catharsis. It's the raw expression of the soul. You're just airing out all your laundry and whatever. You're like, this is something that is purely made by me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you guys are you guys looking? Do you are you hoping to make a career out of it, or is this something you treat more as just a hobby?
Well, mine was a hobby. Whenever there's a long story behind this, but whenever I first started, I was in southern Mississippi, and as Roland and Steven came from southern Mississippi, and they ended up getting out of the house and going to places where people were and making a lot of networking and got in. Whereas me, not that I couldn't have done what they did, but what ended up happening to me is I had a job in town that was a really good paying job, and one thing led to the other, and I was a worker. I got married, and it was just life. And back then there was no YouTube, or there was no networking. The only networking you did was, and if you learned anything, it's because you knew somebody who was already doing that thing, and you had to study under them and be kind of like their little protege. Now I envy this generation, because whatever you want to learn how to do, you just get on YouTube and you can figure it out.
Yeah.
But when I was growing up, there was none of that. So there was nobody around me in my town that was doing what I was doing or wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there was Steve and Roland, but they had already, by the time I got old enough, they had already moved out and they were over in, California and wherever. And I actually talked to them a few times, not Roland, but Steven a few times. And, but it was just such a divide. It was so hard to, so then it kind of became a hobby. I worked offshore. I worked in the screen print business, and then eventually I went to school, became a teacher. I taught school for several years, and then eventually I was like, if I'm going to be doing something, I want to be doing something to do with art. And that's what I decided was, regardless of what it was, I wanted to do art. And so parts of it's a hobby, but parts of it's not. So I do art for a living. I'm a graphic artist by day, and then, do all this other stuff by night.
Yeah.
So I don't really know. It's kind of a lifestyle, as I'm sure it is for y'all too.
Yeah. If I could make it my bread and butter, like all it is, live off the money gained from writing, I would. But I'm already at the point where it's a starting career, but unless you're a best-selling writer, writers don't make a whole lot of money.
True.
Yeah. I think Donnie Katz, the most recent example I can think of, that someone who lived entirely off of writing comics, and he capped out like 13 titles a month for Marvel. So he was essentially writing a full script once every 2 days. But because the actual way production is scheduled, it's probably way more than that. My day job is in financial analysis, so I write a ton of memos, so I do get to write a bit for my day job, which is nice. And we're going to be showing Quentin's screen here as he's working on a cover, it looks
I'm
like.
just going to color this. This
Okay.
is but go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Oh, no, you're good. But I got myself set up in a pretty decent place where I have a lot of time to write, but I still get, my nut covered. Just trying to be a modern Sinclair Lewis of comics, ingrained in the financial system, while also being incredibly critical of it, but mostly just there to cover the net while working on writing. So I'm content where I'm at, but if I could get to the point where it was strictly just writing income, absolutely. Even if it meant I had to work more hours.
Yeah. I'm doing with the graphic art. There is a lot of stuff that I really enjoy about the graphic art, but this is my first love, is what I do after work.
Yeah.
And I really wanted that's when I was saying, I want to do artwork. What I was saying I really wanted to do something that's going to improve me even when I'm not getting to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
So if that makes any sense. So.
Oh, just curious. I'm attempting to make a career out of it. I've been doing it for many years, trying to make a career out of it.
Yeah.
I would hope by making 300-page book, I would attempt to make something out of it.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm attempting. I mean, again, maybe like many artists, I'm attempting to use it to move into other areas of art, like a stepping stone, which comics can do that a lot.
Yeah.
But I've been doing it all my life, and I tried the whole graphic design thing, but for some odd reason, people don't think I can do it, so no one ever hires me, which I find weird because I work as a motion graphic artist with my freelance. But whenever I tried to do graphic design, it was like, no, you can't do that. I'm like, okay.
All right.
So I'm like, all right, I guess not. So, yeah.
Sorry.
But I was always curious, some people are trying to make it, and some people are not. So it's just, the amount of...
Yeah. I don't think there's anything wrong with being the habitual creator, because if it works for you, it works for you. You don't,
Yeah.
making money is not the point of art. Otherwise, the classical era wouldn't have happened, or we wouldn't have had the Renaissance, because a lot of those guys didn't make money until either they also made an invention and sold it, or they got a patron.
Right.
Yeah.
But getting paid for it is definitely nice. So if you're trying to hire an artist, don't say you'll pay them an exposure. You will be reserving the right to get punched.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you, I enjoyed teaching. I really did, and I actually got to teach art for a while. But I was teaching in high school, and I was teaching in the evening times at a college, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed a lot of things about it. But I don't know. At a certain point, I just felt like, this is a waste of my time as an artist.
Mm-hmm.
This is a waste of my time. I'm not improving. That was another thing that I could tell. I'd kind of went stagnant. I'd stagnated because there just wasn't that improvement, and that was a huge issue for me.
Yeah.
And I just came to a place, and of course there was other stuff. That wasn't, I didn't just decide one day, well, I'm just gonna do this. I had a family. I couldn't just, do that.
Right.
But at the same time, it helped me toward my final decision. And it's not, graphic art is not my first choice, but it's something, and it's doing art, and it's, and I often have to do things that I wouldn't, if I was working on my own stuff, that I would not do. But that's good, because in comics, let me tell you, you never know when you're going to be drawing something that is something totally out of your wheelhouse, and you're going to have to do a little bit of research.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have to do like several sketches. I know earlier I was there's a scene where some characters collapse on top of each other in a playful kind of way because they're exhausted. And I've never drawn anything like that. I've drawn people, football players tackling and all that kind of stuff, but it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
The mood and the poses. So I actually just had to look online and get some stuff. See, it's not something that I would do if I was doing my own comic. I would steer away from stuff like that.
Yeah.
But doing somebody else's writing, I kind of would have to,
Mhm.
I have to do things sometimes that I'm not used to. That's the way my work is,
Yeah.
so it helps me, and it helps me to improve. And that's what I want to do, is just push to the next level all the time.
Yep. And I know there's a lot of people, there are two mindsets. A lot of people are set up where either they need to have their day job be in the similar field to their creative job, or there's some people where it needs to be completely different, so they can switch between their two different brain modes from what they're doing for one part of the day and what they're doing for the other part of the day. I'm kind of in between, where my job is half and half, where some days I'm just writing up memos and working my articulation. Other days it's strictly just looking at graphs and making numbers go from red to black. But I think also as a writer, there is also some bit of that where doing something that forces you to become something of a subject matter expert also works out pretty well, because it gives you places to write from, because that's the whole thing. You write what you know. And so I've had for Wolfunder, I had to do a ton of research because I've always been a habitual historian. I have one bookshelf that is filled with different accounts or collections of historical writings or theses on events. I have mostly ancient Roman, but some of it World War II. But I had to do a ton of research to get beyond that. But if I was to do something which I have a pitch out, it's about the accounting firm that handles all the accounting for supervillains. But to do something like that, I would already know what all the jargon is. I'd know what all the numbers do. I'd kind of know what all the roles that would need to be filled there. And then the fun part comes in. Okay, how would I turn this evil?
Yeah.
It's funny. I could understand the idea of you going back to the teaching. I think it's I haven't really taught. I've taught the classes, but I've never really taught. And it's weird. Again, I keep going into these things like, I'd like to teach. Do you have a degree in that? Well, no, I have an art degree. No, you can't. Okay, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it is that sort of, you didn't go through all of that time and training to just teach it the others. You went through all that time and training to take a stab at actually doing something with it.
Yeah.
And I think that's where teaching sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's fun to teach people, but it's also, I mean, it's like, yeah, I didn't learn all this just to pass it to somebody else to do it. I learned all of this because I want to do this.
Yeah. Well,
so there can be a sense of little dissatisfaction in there sometimes.
Well, I think also just a lot of because also as you teach something, depending on the subject you're given, it also allows you to better your own understanding of it, your own practice of it, because you're exposed to it every day. So I mean, C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien were both professors with tenure for a while.
Yeah.
I think also some of the Renaissance painters were after they had developed the Academy system in Venice. Their instructors there. So I think there is also some value there that if you want to do.
I'm not saying teaching's bad.
Well,
I'm just saying that.
And I'm not trying to say that you are. I'm just saying that if you're looking to find what your work-life balance might look like, historically, for a lot of people, it's been teaching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you, one of the things that teaching taught me was how to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is that what I learned through teaching and through learning to teach, and something that school couldn't even really teach me, was if you really want to learn something definitively, you learn it in such a way that you're going to have to teach it.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you, your study will get so much deeper than just a surface, put it in and, and it drops later type of learning. You don't really learn anything that way. But if you learn to teach, then whatever it is you're learning, you will, very quickly become very fluent in whatever it is that you're trying to study.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything has taught me something.
Mm-hmm.
But I really enjoy being able, and I'm very blessed to be able to do artwork as a job during the day. Although it's not exactly, exactly what I would have wanted. But you know what? When I first got into comics back in the aughts, I was a little disappointed because, on the other hand, comics was not what I thought it was.
Mm-hmm.
So there was that, because I dipped my toe into it some and did some stuff here and there, and it just, it really wasn't at all that I imagined it to be. Growing up, all I wanted to do is, if anybody would have asked me, I'm going to be a comic book artist,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
There was a bit of a rude awakening when I finally did get in. And I was like, this is a lot of work.
Yeah.
This is a lot of work, and this is pretty tough, and it's not a lot of money. I thought there was more money in this. I mean, I was making more money in my day job, and that was a little bit of a, deterrent for me at first. So, that's the crazy thing about dreams. I wonder how many people that happens to. They have a dream like that, and then they actually go and do the thing, whatever it is, and then they figure out, this is not at all how I imagined it.
Yeah. Well, I just have to look at the amount of waiters and bartenders in LA or Hollywood.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Wow, I had a thought for like 5 seconds. Yeah, the guy who wrote Green Arrow in like the 2016 run and 2013 run, I think. When I was at Full Sail, they actually came through and spoke at a meeting for the creative writing students. And the entire time he's working at DC, he was also working as a writer. He's also working full time at a book distribution center as a boxer. Like, he would just box books from 9 to 5 and then go home and write one of DC's major characters.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. I can't remember his name exactly, but I believe he did the 2013 run of Green Arrow or thereabouts.
Damn.
Yeah. So that's also another thing to consider when figuring out your balance of things is, are you making sure that your house is in order when you get your schedule set up and you're committing, time to the right places. So it may be you need to commit 8 hours a day at a office job and then do 1 to 4 hours when you get home on making your stuff.
Well, I tell you, one issue that I used to have with a lot of my seniors is, they would get locked in indecision because it was, college time was coming, and they had to decide, for the first time, what am I going to do with my life? And whatever I go to college for, I'm going to be doing that for the rest of my life. And I have to explain to them, no, you got it all wrong.
Yeah.
You need to just decide what you want to be doing for maybe the next 10 years. And you may even change your mind before the 10 years. And
Yeah.
you may not change your mind, and you may do it for 40 years. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you just need to decide what you want to do right now. Don't be thinking about in terms of the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Uh,
And even then, I'm a fan of skip years, but you can take 2 years of just general courses.
yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah, absolutely. But I think also the ability to pivot, pull the trigger, and then also know when to cut the cord. So
Yeah, you got to be a little bit, malleable
Yeah.
because I will tell you guys, and maybe y'all can attest to this too. I have lived long enough to see that I am not the same person that I was, especially when I was in high school. I have changed. Like, I am a totally different person.
I hope not, because I
my-
imagine someone your size would be unfair in the football lineup.
Yeah, yeah. Well, see, I mean, it's you will change so many times, and your heart will change, your mind will change, the way you look at things will change. You have to leave a little bit of room for that,
Yeah.
and you have to keep that in mind. That I know a guy who went to college. I think it was 4 years. 4 years to be an electrician. Or no, it was 2 years maybe. But he was going to be an electrician offshore, and he was out there for probably 6 months, and he decided he liked the job that he was working for Georgia Pacific, a lumber mill, more than he liked that, even though it was making less money.
Mm-hmm.
And he went and worked the job at Georgia Pacific,
Oh yeah.
and just forgot the education.
Yeah. Before I got to my current day job, I do underwriting for a smaller credit union, but for that I was working at a big trust bank. However, as many bankers will tell you, working at a big trust bank is a real good way to feel like you sold your soul. So when I got by, he's like, "Hey, we're looking for someone who does what you do. Benefits are better, but the pay is probably not as great." I'm like, "I don't care. Get me out of here."
Yeah.
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 And so, understanding that you're going to not just like your wants or dreams, but also your convictions on general things. You may be,
Oh yeah.
wonder
Yep.
what is most important to you when for each thing you do. So figuring out exactly what that is a process, and it's going to take time. And so understanding that you're going to need to shift and figure out where things are going to be for you. That's also going to help inform your thing, because you're the less, I think, was it Voltaire or something, the less serious you can take life, the better you're going to be at it. Yeah. Know that nothing is ever as dire as it seems, so you can always adjust and pick and choose as needed.
Yes. Agreed. I'm not going to render all that right now.
And pivoting demonstrated perfectly there by Quentin, as he spent a couple minutes there working on something. He's like, we'll do it
I was
later."
thinking,
Yeah.
and I was getting carried away, and I was experimenting, and yeah, I just realized, I could have done this totally different way, and it'd been 10 times easier. So I'm just going to move on to a different part.
And that's a metaphor for choosing your life path.
Yes.
It's never too late to change.
Never too late to change. Art, if it's anything, it is experimentation and trying to find new ways to do stuff. And, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Absolutely.
right, Aaron?
Oh yeah, I'm listening.
Alrighty. About
Balance.
balance. Exactly. So when we're going to be transitioning to our second hour here in a little bit, but to kind of serve as our conclusion. When you guys are setting your trying to segue here from our moment. So everything is done is sort of more, think more so in terms of short term goals. So when you guys are setting up your, working on a project, on a book, do you tend to think more in terms of the bigger goal, like I need to get 22 pages done by this date, or do you tend to think more in the shorter term, like I just need to do 2 pages this weekend, or I just need to do a page today, and have all those smaller goals to work up to the bigger one?
I
usually
know
break it
that a
down.
lot of people are a lot different on this subject. What were you saying, Aaron?
Oh, I was saying I usually break it down. I do 3 pages at a time, and then now I'm flipping back and forth between my comic. But I try to get 2 days to get a page done.
Mm-hmm.
So every 2 days I want to get a page done. That's my goal, and I flip back between the 2 books. So it doesn't always happen, but that's my goal. At least that's what I aim for.
I will say that whenever I get a script, I try to read all the way through it at least once, and then I read the pages that I'm doing a few times. And I try to get the pages that I normally get out a week. Like I have a set goal. And I just focus on getting those pages done that week. I can't really look at it big picture. Sometimes it's too overwhelming.
Yeah.
So I try to, think of the smaller stuff and do it that way, incrementally.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, after I'm done with the page, then I'm like, well, only, 4 or 5 pages left. So, and start on the next one.
Yep.
Back to the layout.
Yeah. I know for my writing, I'm the same way where I have to break it down into smaller goals, knowing sometimes I'll be in the mindset of I need to get 3 pages written this over the next 3 days, or even just be that whenever I get a second to sit down with my work computer, I think like, all right, I'm getting 1 page done right now, and anything more than that is just gravy on it. I'm not getting caught up in the long-term goal for me is kind of a real good way to get overwhelmed. But
Yes.
yeah.
Yep.
But I know for some people they just know, all right, this many pages by this date, and they just kind of pound it out and get things done.
Yeah.
I know Brandon Sanderson is kind of a mix of both, where he'll have his hardcore big date, and then he just does his smaller things along the way, and then at the end he'll do a marathon where for like 18 hours between on 2 days he will do nothing but write to finish up and hit his big date.
Well, I have a quota, a personal quota, every week.
Mm-hmm.
And if I will do whatever I have to meet that quota, but I will not go over that quota, because I feel like unless something is really really heavy
Mm-hmm.
on the next one, I will. But a lot of times I will use that for free time to either work on commissions, and a lot of times I'll try not to even do that. Sometimes I'll just try to push that toward other stuff that I'm probably neglecting by doing this, So I try. I always meet my quota, but I try not to go over it. I know that sounds productive, but honestly,
I am absolutely a fan of mandatory break time.
Yeah.
And that also leads us into our next hour subject. We're going to be talking about not just work-life balance, but balancing, creating, consuming, handling your breaks, and doing, maybe even dealing with some burnout. But before that, let's thank our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Convention, DaytonaBeachComicConvention.com. Go there for all your dates, tickets, pricing, booth pricing, everything like that. Daytona Beach Comic Convention, the premier location for all things comics, collectibles in the Daytona Beach area. That's going to be happening in September. And our other sponsor, tied in with Steam Patriots and Wolf Hunter, is the History List, which is a weekly newsletter where they have different historians submit articles, theses, all that on different historical subjects. And last 2 weeks ago at this point, they had History Camp America, where they had a all-day free online history seminar. And our third sponsor for today is us at Silverline. You can go to Kickstarter.com, Google, look up Silverline Comics on the Kickstarter, and you'll be able to see that we are currently funding 2 new comics. That is Silverline Team Up Champion Missouri and Bear. You can pre-order these because at Silverline we are a little different. You're not funding a comic that is yet to be made. These are already made. You are simply pre-ordering them before we take them online and to retail. We spent the last hour talking about your work-life balance, and we kind of got into the balance between day job and creative job, and choosing how that balance is going to fit best for you, choosing your path, in a overall heart-warming moment for you and the entire family. This next bit, we're going to be talking about something that Quentin had offered earlier in our Facebook chat, which is balancing, creating, and consuming. And we're going to kind of also probably extrapolate this into, making sure you get yourself enough free time, that you avoid burnout, that you stay inspired. And we can also tie in a bit of what Aaron said, which is balancing your intake. He's talking about what things he personally wants to see more of and wants to see less of. But you also think, I know personally when I'm writing something, I have to consider what all I am ingesting media-wise, if it's going to be the right tone and mood to help inspire me going forward, because everything is pastiche, and that's the secret, kids. All artists are hacks. We're just copying everything we saw before us.
And taken in.
Yeah. Or if I'm, doing something that's going to completely ruin the mood. I read a lot of John le Carre and, watched Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, The Imitation Game. Listened to a lot of 1930s big band while working on Wolf Hunter.
Whatever works.
Exactly.
That'll get you in the mood.
Oh, yeah. I'd go from that to it's like generic movie tension music, where it's just the muted guitar and the weird shaky percussion.
What do you mean?
Like the Metal Gear Solid 3 soundtrack is probably like the best example of that I could think of. Just the you just have the bass line on repeat, bump, bump, bump. Then you have a little pan flute coming in. Then it goes back to bass line, bump, 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 shaker. Just stuff it's more there to convey a mood than to actually be music, I guess.
So this is stuff you do while you write?
Yes.
Listen to while you write?
Yeah. So the track CQB from Metal Gear Solid 3. That's the listen along CD that comes with the comic. Put that on for the first 6 pages of issue 2 and the last 2 pages of issue 2. Just that track, CQB, Metal Gear Solid 3.
CQB, huh?
Yep.
Close quarters combat.
Oh yeah.
I usually, since drawing doesn't take I've been watching I don't know, Family Guy. As far as music, usually either Nightwish, Love
Oh.
Bites Dragon Force. Um, as far as music,
I am not a
uh,
music guy.
um, I've been playing Halo while I draw.
Yeah, you
So,
mentioned that. That's so
yeah, so
waiting
yeah,
in the lobby, just cutting it back to. Which I mean, that's kind of the I cannot do that. But if you have like the way to get the optimal balance of
Can't do it. Yeah.
doing work
yeah,
and break at the same time.
yeah. I just
Uh,
pause the game because I usually play games single player.
yeah,
So I just pause and go back to my drawing. But I found that actually starting to help me, as weird as that sounds,
yeah,
because it breaks my line of sight, my train of thought from the
hmm
drawing. So when I go back and look at it after I pause the game, I can see things that are wrong.
yeah.
I'm
Oh,
like, oh, that head looks weird. Oh, that's not right. And
yeah,
so, yeah,
yeah. Can't force yourself to get fresh eyes every now and then.
right.
I have had moments though where I have kind of accidentally done that, where I'm doing like a game or something. Witcher 2 was good for this, where I'll be doing something happened. I'm like, oh wait, this is a really good idea. Pause it, go back, right, like put down 100
Right.
words, come back, start doing something like, oh wait, how about this? I go back, do another 100 words.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then get lost in Wise in the game, and then get one shot by whatever monster I forgot to put on the right oil for.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But
Well, I, for one, I cannot do. I love games. I am a gamer. Um, when I'm working on a project, though, I have to be really careful. And there was at one point I had to just decide, because the same maniacal tendencies I have with art, I have with gaming too.
Mm-hmm.
If it's one that I'm really into and one I really dig,
Oh yeah.
so I had to be real careful. And at one point, I had to just decide: now, am I going to be a creator or am I going to be a consumer?
Yeah.
And that's whenever I'd had the plan for my board game, but I was playing so many other games, and these other games were getting me away from it. And I just had to decide: am I going to play games or am I going to make games? Am I going to play games and watch movies, or am I going to draw some stuff?
Yeah.
And uh, so now I take shifts, and I'm on a really long, big shift right now away from games
Yeah.
for a while, just because that's what I have to do. Everybody
Mhm.
has to do what, because after a while you get to knowing yourself and you see your own patterns,
Absolutely.
even the self-destructive ones. And that's, I finally got to that place, and,
Yep.
just had to say enough's enough. And so I will play a game from time to time, like Minecraft or something with my son.
Yep.
But I try to stay like my head goes down whenever I see new games that are out and stuff. And
Oh yeah.
because oh, dude, there's so many games out I would so play right now. I
E
could just see myself spending
E
time.
E3 is your Lent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
I'm exactly the same way, but I'm at the point where I can manage it in such a way where, as long as games are the last thing I do in a day. So I know my calendar is there for a reason. That's because of those habits. Oddly enough, we're gonna talk about bad habits, but my family is all mostly have addictive personalities. But you can also find ways to make that useful, and that you become addicted to time management and micromanaging yourself.
yeah. Addicted to Excellence.
Exactly.
Sounds like your new book, Tim.
Addicted to Excel spreadsheets.
Excel spreadsheet. How to get over it, man.
Someone had posted something where it was a Hard Times article, and his Microsoft updates Excel now with stories like Instagram or Facebook. I'm like, that would be the worst thing. So I'd just be seeing people are doing on their Excel sheets all day. So the I book out everything in my day, so I know that I do my day job, I come home, I go to the gym, or my setup for this show, or my other show on Wednesdays. It's all very well planned and thought out. And then after that, I spend my hour writing, and I might eat dinner at the same time. Although I'm currently in a cutting season, so maybe it's dinner, maybe it's a single thing of yogurt, depending on how many calories I had for lunch. And then from there, from kind of whenever I finish up my writing until I fall asleep in my chair, I will hop on Destiny or one of the Paradox titles or StarCraft or something.
You go that way? Yeah, I don't know. Don't even ask me how I got started doing the whole game thing. I guess I got bored of watching load screens.
Yeah.
And said like, because I play a lot of the Dark Souls type games, and I'm always dying. So I'm like, well, it's amazing how much you can get done when you're waiting for a screen to load.
Oh, yeah.
And when you're doing that over and over again, pretty soon you're just like, well, I don't want to sit here and just stare at the wall. So I just sit at my table. I just put my drawings in front of me at the table and play my game. And when I die, or when there's a cutscene or something else stupid where I don't need to watch it but just listen to it, I draw.
Yeah.
I will clock a page a night doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. And if it works for you,
Which
it works
says
for you.
something about video games. Of like, how much entertainment are you giving me when I'm constantly looking away and doing something else? But
Yeah. Yeah, that's like we had said earlier. Like, you find your own balance and your own path, and whatever works for you works for you. Yeah. Man, I'd be
especially when I play online with my friends, because they're always trying to figure something out. Well, we got to figure this out. We can't figure out how to do this, and so they spend like. And that's why I just started drawing. I'm like, okay, well, let me know when you figured it out, because I'll just sit here.
We did have something like that when I was doing the Spire Stars raid in Destiny. We had 3 people join us, and we had already like sent them the raid guide. We had already walked them through kind of some of it, and they got in and we ran it, and they're like, "Oh, you have no idea what's going on." And they're like, "No, we don't." I'm like, did you watch the guide? No. Did you listen when we gave like the briefing part? No. Okay, so we're all lined up in the room waiting to start the encounter. They're watching the YouTube video, and so I'm like, I guess I'm just going to write a project outline. So I wrote a project outline in the time it took them to get ready for the raid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how I figured out how to do a lot of my stuff, is just sort of in between. Tom McFarlane talks about this.
Yeah.
Like, he's going to a meeting in a car, and he'll just sit there and ink on his iPad or whatever.
Yes. Yeah.
The car ride. And he's like, you're able to get tons of stuff, because you just realize as you go through the day, there's like a lot of just downtime. And if you can find a way to like throw that into your downtime, you can get a lot of stuff done.
Oh, yeah. And depending on your day job and how active the IT department is, or how much it's encouraged, do or do not do this. But, or I guess you can if you have a big enough phone screen, go ahead and do it. But I do a lot of writing at my day job, because I'm entirely dependent on referrals or applications coming through. Then like the few reports I do get, you knock out in the first 30 minutes of the day. So for busy seasons, it can't really do it, but
Right,
if it's
certain seasons, yeah,
absolutely. I'm just sitting there, I'm like, all right, here's 10 pages I wrote in between meeting with clients. Perfect.
Yeah. I just noticed I'm able to get a lot of stuff done that way.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's one reason why I got tablets and I got this Galaxy Note.
Oh, yeah.
Because I can actually draw on it, even though it's got a tiny little bezel thingamabobber.
Yeah. I mean,
Still helps.
Yeah. I have one friend who works in media marketing, and he's in an office. He had a workstation, 3 laptops, and 2 phones, all in the same room, all were doing something. And,
oh my!
Yeah, and he was working on his own video editing on one. He was oh man, compiling a video for his job. Another, he's doing kind of some other stuff on the phones, answering calls and whatever on the two cell phones, and then he had his third laptop open playing Total War Rome. So
multitasking.
Exactly, you find a ways to fit things in.
Yeah.
It's strange how much you can do if you just do little moments here and there.
Yeah.
That's what I saw. Because I'm like you. I like the game too, and I'm like, well, I'm never gonna get through all of this. Like, how am I gonna do this? And then I was just started realizing how much downtime I had. So I just like, I'm just gonna throw this in front of me.
Yeah.
While I'm doing this, just to have it there, and before I knew it, I was doing all sorts of stuff. And also, sometimes video games inspire me.
Yeah.
So to have that there to be able, oh, that's a cool idea, and draw it down or write it down or something.
That's it. Yeah. Also, as a writer, it's really kind of handy to do your first drafting from like a sketch pad or a writing pad, because you're forced to do an edit when you type it into your computer. But also, it's much easier to write in Sketchpad when you're at the car shop waiting on your oil to get done, or kind of wherever. If you're outside of a Forever 21 waiting on your lady friend to pick out her Converse. It's much easier to write in a writing pad than it is to, pull out your phone and try to get into Google Docs and
write ideas down. Yeah.
And also, I do appreciate how our first hour, we said, it's your balance it's a time dedication. If you dedicate something, you're gonna make time for it. You're gonna choose it. In the second hour, is like, but absolutely cheat the crap out of it, man.
Yeah.
You can find workarounds and stuff. Absolutely. I mean, I'm amazed at how many workarounds they do in comics now. I mean, when they did, the Star Wars comics, I'm like, because I actually drew the Millennium Falcon freehand. I'm like, I'm just going to attempt. It took me like a week to get that right, to attempt to draw all the detail freehand the best I could. So when I look at comics and see how
right.
Oh man, they're just drawing this per panel, and then it dawned on me what they were doing. I was like, yeah, they're not drawing it. It's a 3D model.
Yep. Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, very sneaky.
Yeah.
So they just make all the vehicles out of 3D models. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
But and if you have the it doesn't look as as classic, or depending on the quality model, not as good as an actual like hand drawn thing. But if you're working from production schedule, I mean, you do what you gotta do.
Yeah, definitely. That is another thing that my job has been good at teaching me, is we have a schedule when we come in, and we have to have it done before we go.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I can get late. Thank goodness we finally got our workforce back up a little.
Nice.
To where that's not quite as bad, but it's an issue sometimes, especially when the balance of what we're taking in outweighs the balance of the people that we have in those positions to actually do it.
Yeah. It's we're back up to full staff as well, and that's been a very nice feeling, not having to cover that. Like, I'll take training someone any day over being even just one person short.
Oh yeah.
All right. So when you're when we're working though, what we were kind of talking about our ratios of taking in stuff as we're putting stuff out. Some of us have to schedule it out to either be like weeks later or same day, but still very different chunks, or even just back to back, just take input out. But what sort of do you find that you're able to take in just kind of whatever and then find the balance in your output at the end, or do you need to be that's something that's on theme or shares similar concepts, ideas, similar look? I mentioned that I needed to be within the same tone at least. So writing Wolfener is a lot of hard-boiled spy stuff. But depending on other stuff, it may just be like, okay, strictly capes or sci-fi lunacy. How do you guys find that you need to refine your ratios on that?
Right now, the two comics I'm doing are pretty different. Obsolete is a sci-fi comic, spaceships, guns, stuff like that. My Gollins is not.
Yeah.
It's a fantasy comic. So that's a switch, and I do switch up styles a little bit. There's a few different styles I'm trying to mimic. Like to do the muscles in the obsolete. So I was looking at like Dragon Ball Z.
Oh
Where
yeah.
they draw the basic muscles, but that's not anatomically correct at all.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so I'm pushing more towards that. And here, like, it's not supposed to be realistic, and I'm not pushing for that. But yeah, it's definitely two different styles. I almost kind of find it a nice break, because if I get tired of drawing one comic, I go draw the other. And so my Gollins goes much faster. But then again, I've been drawing those characters for years, so that's not hard for me. This one takes a little more time sometimes because I have to remember how I designed them. Like, how does this guy look again? Especially I got a lot of little details and stuff. But yeah, so I actually don't mind it. I've been able to switch from different styles pretty easily and fast. So, I mean, the stuff I do for my work is totally different than the stuff I do for comics. So,
I
yeah.
try not to do a whole lot of stuff like whenever I'm working on that Christmas special.
Mhm.
I try
Right.
not to do a lot of stuff, especially nothing that's going to compete. Like, I don't mind doing this pinup or a couple pinups here and there, but I don't get into any real big projects. And I tell anybody who I'm doing stuff for, look, you may or may not get this, anytime soon. Just letting you know. And that's just the way I have to roll, because I don't like to switch around a lot sometimes. Sometimes I do need a little bit of a break. So it is good to have a little something on the side that's kind of been waiting, that I can get off and take a little break from fantasy or take a little break from sci-fi. So that's good, but I mean, I try not to, fill myself up too bad with stuff, so that I'm switching around a lot. I can, and I will. Money is a motivator, but as a rule, I try not to too much, because I don't want to take away from what I've promised to do.
Yeah.
You know what I
Right.
mean? And it's one of those things, like I said earlier, about knowing yourself, and I just try to be real careful that I don't get sidetracked. And Tim, you were talking about the shiny new syndrome.
Oh yeah.
Although I don't have that to a great degree, I do have it a little. So I had to be careful,
Oh yeah.
It's new and exciting. Yeah.
Yep. That's yeah.
because I may be like really not feeling the fantasy, and I'm already promised to do this fantasy book, and I'm kind of right in the middle of it, or I'm fixing to do it even.
Mhm.
And then I see some sci-fi stuff. I'm like, man, that's so cool. I wish I was doing that right now. So I try to stay away from stuff that's going to pull me off too much, just
Absolutely.
because of my own. I have issues.
Absolutely. Yeah. When I'm going between projects, I do try to keep everything on theme at least, Eric. Or if I do have to split it, I try to do the Brandon Sanderson method, where I will bounce between them, but I have very clear jumping off points. And again, I will change up my music. I'll change up, if I was reading anything after that to match whatever that new thing is. So if I'm writing,
Good plan.
yeah. So if I'm writing spy thriller, I'm going to read a spy thriller afterwards or whatever, and then the next day I'll be working on a book a while ago about druids. So then I go into like reading some Celtic myth after so everything to be completely different from day to day. But everything has to stay like on brand, otherwise I'm going to have very intriguing druids and very mystical spies.
That actually wouldn't be bad, but
it's not the project. Yeah.
It'd be kind of cool to actually write a fantasy spy novel.
Well, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what you're kind of doing, right?
So this
That's not really fantasy, is it?
no, Wolf Hunter is it's secret history, so it's a type of alternate history in that it in theory it happened within our universe. It's just that it happened in the places that we do not have full documentation of. So yeah. The idea for the first arc is the most documentation we have for the actual train ride of the from London to Liverpool with James Bowen is from James Bowen's diary, and he briefly mentions that he loses the prototype for radar but gets it back, and we don't go into great detail on how or why. And so
he gets it back. He just kind of.
It's where you come in.
Exactly. So I'm like, well, what if spies happened? And they told him not to put that in the book because it looks bad. Because it does kind of look bad that the thing that eventually allowed us to, beat up the Luftwaffe and break the blockade nearly got lost on a train ride.
Like that cool game, Wolfenstein, the old ones. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
But yeah, I do have a book that I have to go through and do a rewrite of the outline on it, but it's kind of fantasy spies. It's like a fantasy spy hunter set in a parallel to late 1800s Austria, but with it's like Tesla punk, so it's a lot of cool electrical style stuff. Giant Tesla coils provide free energy everywhere, and potential maybe magic zombie outbreak done by a sleeper cell. Read more to find out. But yeah,
find out. And Tim's new book.
Speaking of balance and stuff, do you guys ever check out different genres of comics and stuff? Or watch different genres? I mean, do you ever intentionally try to read something different?
I definitely do. Like, I have my go-to X-Men because they crafted me into the man that I am today. But I will if I hear of anything that sounds weird or just out there, I'll absolutely look into it. That's what got me into Department of Truth, and it is a trip. There was a Comixology Unlimited or Comixology Original not too long ago, which I enjoyed, but it was out there. It was about an Uber driver, but their Uber bride was Satan, and they ended up going into the underworld.
The way you said that was Satan?
Yeah.
I think his name was. I can't remember.
It was Satan, but not Satan. It was it was they steal from mixing Western myths with some like Celtic myths with some everything like together. So you get a whole bunch of everything. It was interesting. It was weird. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I read. My friend gave me, because I usually read fantasy or like sci-fi, but I've been getting to. He gave me a comic that was called Aster of Pan, which is, as I recommend all of you, like if you guys want to read it, it's cool. But it was like this sort of futuristic world where it's like post-apocalyptic and everyone's kind of living in the aftermath of this, nuclear war, and this other like major nations going around and overtaking smaller nations, and they were challenging, like, we can overtake you, and this one guy's like, challenge them to a game of celestial mechanics, and they're like, what? And it's like, the only way you could defeat the big nation is challenge to this game they play. And as you go through the comic, you realize like this sort of celestial mechanics, which is based on the movements of the planets or whatever, it's just one huge game of dodgeball. And they play this huge game of dodgeball with like tanks and shit. sorry, but tanks and stuff,
Yeah.
and it's hilarious. The guy who drew it did a fantastic job, but it was such an interesting concept because the people in the world don't realize what this is, but every reader who reads is like, well, yeah, this is dodgeball.
Yeah.
Everybody's played dodgeball, and so yeah, that was a really cool comic. So, I read all sorts of weird stuff, but I'll go to the library and check out slice of life, like romance, humor, anything that looks interesting. I'm always interested in seeing how people tackle comic storytelling in different ways.
Yeah.
And how they use the medium to tell different types of stories
Absolutely. Yeah.
and stuff, which I always think is interesting. In some genres, I almost think are trying to think of any. Some are like more effective and less effective. Like I've always thought horror comics were good, but I almost sometimes feel without the music, sometimes I don't know if they work. I'm trying to think of any horror comic that really scared me. Maybe grossed out but scared you.
Yeah. I can't think of what
I don't know.
really scared me. I know Lock and Key had really good tension. And I'm interested.
Lock and Key did, yeah.
Yeah, I'm interested to see the adaptation because yeah. But the
I tried to watch the adaptation and I did not like it at all. They changed some stuff that the one thing they changed that kind of really bummed me out was I love the way they did the head key in the book. And they completely changed that in the show, and I'm like, no.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
That was my favorite. I love the way they pop the head open and they look, and that was my favorite. And they changed it. I'm like, nah, it's stupid.
Okay. Yeah.
So, that's okay. Yeah, I mean, other than that, I didn't watch much past that, so whether it got better or whatever, it was like, there were some things I really liked in that, and so if they changed it, I was like, nah.
Yeah. I know. Yeah. I've also been a bigger fan of horror novels more than anything else horror related. Just maybe a bit different.
I usually, on your questionnaire, and I usually stick to what I know, but I always am willing to, if someone gives me something or, hey, you ought to check this out, I will check it out. And, just see if there's anything. Yeah. So, I mean, I get new stuff like that, but I don't actively go looking for stuff because there's just so much. And another thing is, I really hate getting invested in something. And this is especially true with like movies and stuff. I really especially hate getting involved in something for them to drop the trap door of all of a sudden we're talking about all this political stuff and it's no longer fun. It's about, I thought I was leading down to some kind of twist and ended up that the twist was that, you're about to give me your whole spiel about, what you think about your worldview, in other words. And
which I find kind of it takes out of the story unless the story is intrinsically about that.
So I'm real careful nowadays because so many things are doing that, and they're trying to tell a story under a story or making you wait to the end to see all along this was about this political thing, and you've been fooled. I hate it when they do that. But usually I just get like, for instance, I never touched anime or manga, and then a friend of mine, or I made a friend that
you made a friend, Quentin?
I know, right? He says that anyway. But anyway, he is totally all up in that stuff. And because of that, I have been exposed to it, and I have a deeper appreciation for it, but I don't actively go and look for it unless he suggests something. He'll say, hey, you'll probably like this. I know what you like and what you don't like, and you should try this because you may really, really dig it. And sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. For the most part, though, I don't really go for the writing anyway. I go for a book, like an artist,
right?
And that's usually what gets me on stuff.
I usually just go to my library, and they usually have a ton of weird. And my library actually has comics and graphic novels that I've only seen at the library. Like, I can't find them outside them. Or I haven't seen it in a comic shop, which I always find kind of weird, but to each their own.
I am actually in the official art capital of Texas. But the trouble about it is, if you're not like a museum gallery artist
Mm,
or a westerny type of artist.
Yeah.
If you're not totally kind of down,
like,
I'll just say it, the hippie kind of art
it's even
that's
just like,
really super artsy.
yeah,
Yeah.
like, well, I
Uh,
mean, even it's like, I guess the term is traditional art or classical art, and that it's all about the
Right.
canvas and their oil
Yeah.
paints, not.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I am an illustrator.
Hmm.
According to the people that I'm talking about, I'm an illustrator, and illustrators and commercial artists are, kind of less than.
Yeah,
Period. I'll just leave it
they
that.
always consider. I've had enough of that
Yeah.
in college, where they always consider you like, yeah, you're the workman of the art field. You don't have any ideas, and yeah, I've got enough. Of
So a lot of the stuff the last time I went to the library, when I went to the graphic novel section,
Mhm.
it was very outdated. We're talking, 90s, not even good 90s.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't even think of that because I mean I live in outside Portland, where Portland's a very comic
No, yeah.
centric city.
Well, we got a con here, and it did okay, but it's just not that big, and there's just not a lot of that here. There's not a lot. I mean, there is. Man, if you are an artist, this is a place to be.
Hmm.
San Angelo, Texas. But at the same time, if you're not the right kind of artist,
Yeah.
good luck.
I feel
Have
like,
fun.
yeah, I feel like coming into Portland, you're greeted by someone giving you like a Dark Horse sticker and a Dutch Brothers cup. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
We're very comic centric, but very. I'd almost say Portland is more indie focused on
Oh,
indie comics
yeah.
than they are on mainstream comics, which is a little different, but they are.
Yeah. Well, that's like talk about how the way Rose City was laid out last time I was there, where the main auditorium, yeah, obviously had big stuff for Dark Horse and Oni because they're our locals,
Yeah.
and they're the ones who actually like foot the bill for the convention. But like the main convention floor is like if you have if you have like a market cap of less than like 2% of comics, you're on the main floor. DC and Marvel pushed in the back to where like, you got the some of like the random vendors and where Pauly Shore was.
Yeah. Yeah, it's different, and it's so I'm curious when I go down to Daytona Beach Con. The only con I've been outside my state is San Diego,
Mm-hmm.
but that's kind of like
Movies.
it's
and
almost
like
like a world con. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like it's like local, but it's like everything. So I'd be curious to know how Daytona
yeah,
compares to based on Florida, the con over here. So I'm curious to see that. Yeah, because Portland's always everything's niche or indie. A lot of anime stuff
Oh,
too.
yeah.
I mean, you're gonna have that everywhere.
I'm a little.
Yeah, I don't know. I
envious.
like to check out different genres and stuff. I have a hard time sticking to reoccurring comic series. I used to collect comics like series, but anymore. I even a few years ago I tried like, oh, I'm gonna start trying to collect some comic series, and I just get really bad about going to the comic shop.
Oh,
I
yeah.
should get a box or whatever, but I just So if you talk about the new artist syndrome, like new stuff, like you're
Oh,
doing
yeah.
new stuff, that's me in comics.
yeah.
Like I've read this a while, but there's something new over here. I want to check this out.
Yeah,
So
if I'm buying a physical book, I need to get the trade or the collected edition.
Yeah.
Right.
I will follow things if I'm following something monthly, like because we don't have a like subscription or traditional like comic store in the area, which is still it bugs me to no end. Where you could actually let them pay them to hold a box for you, and just pick it up whenever you can get a chance that month. I get it through a Comixology subscription because then I just get an email from Amazon saying, "Hey, your comics in your inventory." Great.
Nice. Yeah, I do a lot of the cosmicology. I mean, reading that stuff. When I check stuff out, a lot of times
Yeah.
I'll go to cosmicology unless I can get it in store, and
Mhm.
then I'm a big sucker for hardback
Oh
collected
yeah.
stuff. So anytime there's something that's like a big nice hardback, especially if a story I like, I'll get that.
Yeah.
I do collect some comic issues. Like a lot of times I go into a comic store, if I see some issue here or there, I'll pick it up just because it looks interesting, just to try out the story. I found some really cool ones. I remember one a few years ago. I found about like this space mechanic that I can't remember the name of it, and then I saw like 1 or 2 issues, and then I just never saw it again, and that was kind of cool. So yeah, I've sometimes I'll pick up stuff just to check it out and stuff. I usually don't stray to superheroes, but then again, even growing up, I liked the X-Men. That was about as close. So superhero stuff just doesn't do much for me, but sci-fi and fantasy are much more.
Yeah.
I wish there'd be more fantasy comics, and I'm surprised that sometimes there's not as many.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that's maybe why I've strayed to European comics. You find a lot of fantasy type comics in European stuff more than America.
French science fiction, holy cow! French science fiction comics are so good.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I just finished reading a few years ago. I collected the Valerian. Valerian series, which was really good. I didn't even know about it until the movie came out. Then I went and bought all these. They released all these hardbacks in America to cover the entire series, and that was really good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's. I'm always looking for something new, something I've never seen before. And that's just because it invigorates me to give ideas. I write pretty eclectic stories, anyways. I assume so. I don't write traditional stories, so
yeah,
that. But I do like some superhero stuff. Strange enough, the more eclectic the superhero stuff, I'll get into it. There was one called. It was a comic book years ago called Strike Back, and I think it was actually done by maybe Malibu, but I'm not sure. Maybe I should have to roll. And it had this guy that had this scarf that he could turn the scarf into anything, like ladders and it was really weird. And then he had this Red Devil character. So there's these really eclectic, weird superheroes, and anything that's like really weird or different in superheroes. I think the last Marvel comic that I really liked was something called Next Wave. Agents of Hate, which is like this 2-issue thing. That thing was kind of funny and goofy. I like that one. But yeah, but like I went back and collected all the Warland comics. I don't know if you guys remember old '90s Image. Have you ever seen the anime Record of Lotus War?
Yeah.
It's very heavily inspired. He pretty much just took Record of Lotus War and made this sort of like fantasy comic. He did another one, I think, a comic called Dark Minds.
Okay.
And he was big for a little while, and he was kind of brought this anime influence into these Image comics and the Warland stuff. He pretty much finished most of the Warland stuff, but more manga inspired. So yeah, and then of course Battle Chasers, which I'm hearing Battle Chasers is coming back.
Yes, yeah, I saw that as well.
I hope it does.
So
I don't know his art.
Yeah, it's not Joe Mad drawing it, somebody else, but I think that'll work, which I'm totally fine. I just would like to see him at least have some conclusion to the story, because I have a hardback of that, and it just pretty much drops.
Yeah.
I mean, it literally shows like half of like issue 10 or 11, like half drawn, and then it just stops.
Yep.
So yeah.
Why is he not doing it? I wonder what he's doing. Why is he not doing it?
I think he works a lot in video games and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that.
So I don't know why he's not. It'd be cool if he did or did one. I mean, McFarlane gave Greg Capullo for years, but I think even Tom McFarlane comes back every once in a while and does some Spawn covers or interior work every once in a while. And that could be the same sort of situation here, where it's done by other artists, but every once in a while Joe Mad would do an issue or cover or something. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. Did Joe Mad work on the Battle Chasers game that came out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That Battle Chasers video game was really fun.
Yes.
That was like, wow. And I was kind of hoping maybe they would like continue the comic in some form, but they didn't. It was just kind of its own adventure. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
But I really liked they added that new character. He looked like a devil hunter, vampire hunter, like Castlevania guy.
Yeah.
He had like white in the fur and the cape. He had like a mask on with horns. I thought that guy was cool.
I never played it. I was not even aware of it until after I had played Darksiders, the first one.
Oh yeah.
Then I wanted to, and I just never did.
It's fun. If you like old school Final Fantasy role playing games, they really did a good job of mimicking that. So it actually got pretty. It's pretty short too. It's not super long.
Yeah.
It's not turn-based, is it? Is it action?
Yeah, it is. But it's actually fun turn-based. Because usually turn-based is a hit or miss, but I had a lot of fun with that turn-based stuff.
Might be worth checking out your next shift to gaming again.
Yep.
Yeah. So I like the Darksider series too.
All right.
But yeah, I like. So yeah, I guess I'm sci-fi. There's a certain type of sci-fi I like, and there's a certain type of fantasy. I think that's where I'm more of a digger than most people, because I'm always trying to find that, weird. Like the one of my favorite sci-fi comics was like Rogue Trooper, besides Judge
Yeah.
Dredd. So trying to find like old, like military stuff like that, sci-fi military. It's I guess just hard sometimes. I know that stuff's out there. You just got to dig for it.
Rogue Trooper is actually one of the first comics I saw at our public library.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. And they made a video game of that too, which is really good.
Yes.
And but yeah, that was like influence. And so yeah, I know, it's like I know the stuff I like when I see it. I just have to dig around to find it.
Yeah. So since we're already kind of talking about video games and what we like doing, so the other form of balance is we already talked about finding the right balance to force yourself to get your work done, but how about forcing yourself to not get work done, dealing with burnout and making sure you're taking the required time to not go insane trying to correct the same panel without end.
Are you watching me? Is that what? Are you like watching me? And you're like, how you do the same thing over and over and over till you get the right color, Quentin.
My friend helped me with that. My friend Tom, he basically, I would show him things that were like this thing's a little off, a little nudge. And I would be like, is this correct? Do you think they'll notice it? And he just looked at me and he kept saying, no one's going to notice this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And because he's like, you've read comics a lot. He's like, I'm like, yeah, of course. He's like, how many times do you stop and notice things that are like wrong or different? And I'm like, well, I do. It's like, does it bother you? I'm like, no, I just read it. And he's like, there you go. They're going to look at the overall package. You're just going to slide right through it.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, but sometimes if you make a mistake, even if you know it's a mistake, the readers will assume that was intentional.
Oh yeah.
They won't consider it a mistake because they will assume, well, if he printed, then he must be okay with it. So it's taught me how to let go of some of that stuff, and also realizing how fast people read comics and how many comics they read. That to kill myself over one panel is just kind of silly sometimes. I started learning how to let go of that a lot.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I noticed all those things. So you were wrong. Now you have to change your whole mentality.
I'm pretty sure I do. I used to be, I used to get up at night and do the old well, this panel's bothering me and I got to do it, but I have found ways to circumvent that.
Yep. It's something I kind of also learned from playing music and doing it live. The joke is if you mess up a note, you didn't mess up a note. It's just jazz.
Yeah, it's just like...
So yeah.
It's just jazz, man.
Exactly. That's
most people are not even gonna hear it.
Yeah.
That's, I think, probably the one thing I started figuring it out is I just think like everyone's watching me, and then you realize no, they're people, strangely enough, are not as I mean, this is the thing that I always find and I kind of use as a Star Wars reference, that he went back and redid the original Star Wars, right?
Mm-hmm.
And from a technical standpoint, did he make those scenes more lively and better? Yes, he added more stuff. They looked more alive. But people didn't like that. They wanted the old stuff. They wanted to see the strings and the puppetry.
100%. Yeah.
So here's somebody where that actually backfired. Where he went in, the technically I can make this better, more like I envision. This is what you want to see. People we don't want to see this.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is that after seeing that, I'm like, okay. And I have mistakes. I actually have mistakes in my goblins that I did. I actually saw the mistakes and I just kept them in there because I'm like, if you find them, then good on you.
Yeah. Or a good example also from a writer, like if you have a typo that gets through, I had submitted
Yeah.
something where I had accidentally added in an extra P and an H. So instead of a windshield wiper, is a windshield whipper. But the editor is like, they got super mad at me because like, man, I thought this was intentional. I was like up late Googling, trying to like, oh man, he thought of something I didn't know existed.
It's sometimes those things, those funny mistakes. Actually, I mean, if they took out the scene where the stormtrooper hits his head on the door,
Oh yeah.
it just wouldn't be the same, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, there's some stuff where it's like, now Star Wars may be a unique case because of the popularity
Yeah.
it is. I mean, uh, but there is something to be said for
Yeah.
making something kind of warts and all, and then having it kind of be its own thing.
Yeah.
I mean, not
And
worrying so much about perfection. Not saying
Yeah.
you shouldn't, at least try to do your best.
But right,
I
you have
mean-
like the tasteful edits, which is taking Blue Pants guy out of the Mandalorian.
Right.
Very clearly not supposed to be there, but then you have like overcomplicating it and trying to get too perfect, which is 3D Jabba superimposed over Episode 4.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, not good.
Yeah.
And it sometimes can also go into, and I'm sure as a writer, Tim, this can go into something called recursive editing.
Mm.
Have you heard of that term before?
Yes.
Yeah. And this also works sometimes in comics, but not as much. Obviously the idea of recursive editing, if people don't know it listening, is the idea you will sit there and start writing a page or a paragraph, and you continuously edit it and not move any further. You burn yourself out on the first few pages because you want it to be
Yep.
perfect, instead of writing the whole thing out in very rough form and then going back in and fixing this. And I see this sometimes with artists, that they'll sit there and work on the first page or first 2 pages of comic and try to get it right and get frustrated. And it's like, oh, this is stupid, and give up. And so it does work and all that. And it's a dangerous trap to get into
Yeah.
because you can't go forward because you're constantly fighting your either lack of skill or your
Yeah.
vision that you have lack of skill. Well, most people look at like my art and like, wow, this stuff looks great. Like they don't see it. And I've noticed that things I thought were mistakes, people don't see it. And things that I thought were great, people can't figure out.
Yep.
So I'm like, okay,
yeah.
I'm just going to go forward and do my best.
Yeah. That's the Ira Glass quote, which I don't know if people know Ira Glass, but he wrote TV for a long time, and he hosts a show on NPR out of Chicago, where This American Life. But he was talking about getting into creating television. He says you get into the game because you have great taste, but when you actually put something down, you realize that your talent doesn't yet match your taste, so it
Right.
pisses you off. But the more you do, the more you increase your talent. But unfortunately, you also end up increasing your taste the more you take in. So your talent's never going to match your taste, but your talent
Right.
compared to the taste of someone who isn't in the game, no matter where you are, it's going to be extraordinary to someone.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like I have to realize, like when I listen to music, live music, I would probably not hear a mess up or a note, or if they did, I would not realize it because I'm not a musician. So I'm just enjoying the music, and so I'm always impressed that they can do this at all.
Yeah.
And so same thing with art. Like as an artist, when I see other people trying to, it's one of those, like, if I see somebody who's trying to be cartoonish, I don't worry about anatomy and other stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because they're pushing it like a cartoon.
Yeah.
If somebody's trying to be realistic, pushing that, and it's a little off, that's where it starts to get a little drawing for me. Because I know they're trying to go for realism, they're just not there.
Yeah, that's why I don't get in that game. I used to try to go for realism,
Right.
and that is just that if you try to do realism, you're some piece is gonna poke out
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
somewhere,
Yeah.
and it's just because you were going for that, you're gonna lose.
Yeah. And I think AJ, the artist on Wolf Hunter, did a really good job of using your buy-in. The rule is you have one major buy-in per page, where audience just kind of accept something and go in. But if you add in minor details, you create more opportunities for buy-in because they see something, you're like, okay, so the next thing gets bought into. Or you could do it where you get one major thing right, or one very technical thing right, and people read through the rest of the way. So Wolf Hunter, it's World War II. Obviously, there are actual vehicles that people reference for. There's actual things, and people are very nerdy about World War II. They know all.
Yes.
Hobbyists know a lot about it. So what he does, using his experience doing technical manuals for the army, he actually knows how to detail those engine interiors and everything like that. So we have a Hawk or Hurricane, and part of it gets blown up, and it's crashing Earth as like the part of the frame is thrown up. So he gets the engine spot on. The rest of it, he can just kind of throw it away. Side, yeah. So
yeah, usually if you get one thing right in a lot of stuff, you can kind of fudge other stuff. That's interesting, the concept of buying in. Like if you buy into that, the other stuff is usually okay. It's usually that one thing. And I mean, if you're actually thinking, if you ever like idea, like if you thinking you can make a comic or something, no one's going to critique it. That's an effort of futility. Everyone will find a way to critique anything. And it's just kind of like, I don't know if it's an ego boost or whatever, but I get that all the time. And I'm just like, okay, well, it is. I mean, I know to a lot of people it's scary to put your stuff out there, but you can go through. I mean, I remember reading Harry Potter books and finding misspellings all the time.
Oh yeah, that's the weird
big sellers, right?
Yeah, no, that's the weird thing where I'm reading something like this, like something through like Penguin Random House, where like I know their editorial process, and it's a lot of people.
Right.
I mean, there's a typo there. I'm like, how? What?
Yeah, somebody will always get through. Something will always slip through. It's just kind of like, when people come back and say there's mistakes in a comic, and I'm like, you know how much of that I've done? There's stuff I didn't notice till after the fact. Most of my guys have different numbers of fingers. So one guy has 3 fingers, and I'll just give you guys a clue. There's a cover where the guy has 4 fingers. And I'm not tearing apart the cover because it's all colored stuff to fix that finger. So I'm just like, you know what? That's what it is. But yeah, I didn't notice it till way after the fact. I'm like, okay. Because I have to reference my characters all the time because I design my characters. So I'm constantly having all the reference out to remember what I drew and how they drew them.
Yep.
And I still mess up all the time. I do all the time. I actually had to go back and erase something because I had this person has this sort of flap. This woman has a flap in front and behind her, almost like a tourniquet sort of thing. And then she had the one in the front is long and the one in the back is short. And for some odd reason, I started drawing 2 or 3 pages where both of them were super long. And then I started looking. I'm like, well, is that right? And I went back and looked, and I'm like, oh man, okay. So I had to go back and erase everything and like, because that was a little drawing. But I'm like, all right, I caught that. But I would have just kept drawing her like that.
No.
Why my brain switched? Now she needed 2. I have no idea. That's just the way I started drawing her, so it happens. So, yeah, I usually try to stay more to the cartoon side. I've usually some of the, I'm always amazed. Like I look at a lot of Charlie Brown and Charles Soule stuff, and even Scott McCloud talked about this. As you approach iconography, things become more representational but more remembered. Like, in other words, Snoopy and Charlie Brown are much more recognizable than certain more realistic characters.
Yes.
Unless they have some sort of symbol on them.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're Superman, you have a big S, right?
But big ass?
Yeah, the big ass or whatever. Yeah,
Thick.
But it's weird. I started thinking
Demonetized.
About that. The what?
Demonetized.
I know. But yeah, I started thinking about that because I can always, people recognize certain characters like that all the time, but then they, the more realistic ones are still there. They're just not as, and it's weird because it's so simple. I mean, I watch Charlie Brown. It's so simple, and yet he's made like how much money and fame off that
Right.
when he was alive.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, and I know he was a really good artist in real life.
Yeah.
He just did that on purpose. But Calvin and Hobbes is another thing. I mean, everything about Calvin and Hobbes. But Calvin and Hobbes are, I will say this, is decidedly simple but very complex to nail.
Yes.
That is a hand signature, and I've tried to redraw Calvin and Hobbes, and he definitely has a specific way he draws, and you're mimicking those line strokes or whatever. That's a little harder.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Alrighty. Well, that is about our time, so we're going to wrap it up there. We have been a Silverline Show on Tuesday. I have been your host, Tim TK, and of course, I have been joined by Aaron.
Yes. And you can find me on Facebook at Humphreys Illustration, HUMPHRES. You can find me on, or Aaron Humphreys, and you can find me on Instagram at ALH3810. And I do, I'm going to start hopefully posting, I'm going to think of next week, I'm going to start posting my Godlings again on Webtoons.
Nice.
And then, yeah, I think that's all where you can find me. I don't do the Twitter or the TikTok yet.
Okay.
Kind of stay with Instagram and Facebook. That's kind of where I hang.
No dance challenges yet. And of course,
No. I can't get Quentin to join me.
Yeah.
He you know, he's demanding. I have to have those dance moves just right, and I can't get him.
All right. And
Well, you know, after so long of doing amateur nights during the week down at the local dance place, you know, it's hard. It's hard to come home and do it myself for TikTok or anything else.
And Quentin, where can people find your work besides the local disco?
Yeah. You can find my stuff on Facebook, Quentin Bedwell, and also GameCrafter.com, Relic Quest, QJB DeviantArt, and of course just have I post stuff all throughout Facebook, especially in Legions of Valiverse. So all over.
Oh yeah. And like I said, I'm Tim TK, at Tim TK Writer on every social media, at Eggerbacon on Twitch, and Wolf Hunter coming out later this year. So this has been your Silverline Show on Tuesday. We will see you next week. Until then, we have shows again on Wednesday and on Sunday. But until the next time we see you, remember to
Make my